You know, kind of like my other podcast, we could just say they're a sponsor and then free sponsorship.
No one's gonna know,
but it might completely raise up our street cred.
Sponsored by Nike and Adidas.
Is that illegal? Can
Have
we do
you
that?
ever
I think we can do that.
I think if we say free
code
sponsorship,
code cover,
free
use
unofficial,
the code cover, you'll get 100% off.
free unofficial sponsorship.
Use the code cover to get an error message at checkout. Okay.
Welcome to The Cover, where three Hoosier friends judge books by their covers and movies by their trailers.
That's right. I'm Brett, here with my fellow Indiana natives, Remington and Marcus, ready to dive into the stories that keep us up all night and occasionally put us to sleep.
Whether you're a bookworm, movie buff, or just here for the witty banter, we've got you covered.
Each week, we'll dissect a different book or movie, sharing fun facts, hot takes, and moments that make Marcus cry. Spoiler alert, we're not experts, but we're definitely opinionated.
From literary masterpieces to blockbuster flops, nothing is safe from our snarky reviews and wild tangents. Who knew Hoosiers could be this entertaining?
So grab your popcorn and reading glasses because we're about to embark on a hilarious journey through the pages and screens that shape our lives. Or at least our weekends.
You're listening to The Cover. Let's get the show on the road before one of our kids wakes up.
Speaking of drug addicts,
Wow.
Hillbilly Elegy.
We're going for it.
We just read Hillbilly Elegy. What's new right now, boys? Rem, you just hit 7 PRs in the gym today. You want to talk about it?
Whoa.
It's a big day.
It was a big day. I was tired of plateauing every workout. So yeah.
So I noticed you went low rep, high volume.
Yeah. High weight.
Has that been over the period of time? Is that new? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the stage of lifting that I'm in. I want to gain muscle instead of, be able to go for longer periods
Good
of time.
for you, man. It's exciting.
I'll tell you what's new.
Yeah.
Draft Olympics, baby.
Oh man.
Yes.
They are
the calm
planned.
before the storm.
We've got it all set up.
You want to tell the audience what we're doing in terms of, or just tell us?
Nope.
Oh.
Not doing it.
I always think,
Although when this episode comes out, by the time this episode comes out, I will have won the Draft Olympics. I will have drafted my team, and 3 of my top 6 picks will be injured by the time this comes out.
That's true. That's accurate.
I think the only person in this room who could accurately, with any amount of actual factual backup to support their claim that would be winning the Draft Olympics is probably me.
How many times have you won it?
I've won it twice, and
So
I
have
finished
I.
in the top 3, I think, every single year.
So you're saying that when you finish well in the Olympics, you also finish well in the season?
The only person on this podcast who doesn't finish well in the Draft Olympics is Remington.
That's not true. I finished very mediocrely.
Okay. Well, Brett and I, we're basically top 3.
It's so frustrating, too, because I planned the Olympics last year. And so obviously I practiced everything. And I was dominating.
Did you really practice everything?
I mean, the day before.
Yeah.
But I dominated everything up until the final thing. And I even dominated that. But I went first before they invented a new rule.
Dude.
Oh, yeah.
Logan changed the
That was
game.
frustrating.
Logan
I will
changed the
say
game.
that it would be helpful if I practiced these things. But out of integrity, I have not practiced.
I will say this. Last year's Draft Olympics was one of my favorites because there were some big time new situations that you just couldn't prepare for because you didn't know what it meant.
Yeah. So are you talking about the paper airplane and stuff?
Yes. And stuff.
Oh, you're talking about 2 years ago.
You're talking
Oh, was that 2 years ago?
When
Yeah,
Rem
that's
and I
2 years ago.
planned it.
Dude.
It's
amazing.
fun though. We've done a lot of cool things. Like when Marcus and I planned the draft, we bought glass
Yeah.
steins,
Yep.
glass mugs.
Still have mine. Riley had a root beer float out of it 2 nights ago.
Yeah, it's a really cool draft mug that we use when we watch football. We've had really fun events.
I thought about suggesting something like that again this time, but then I figured Francis would just charge everybody for it. So
I would say the obstacle courses have gotten better and better and better. I think whatever. Was that the year that we had the slip and slide? The year that I'm
That
thinking
was
of?
last year.
Last year's obstacle course was
Yeah, that was a lot of
pretty
fun.
epic.
That's how we ended.
The
It was downward.
first year's obstacle course was also really, really, really good. It had a lot of different
Elements.
things in it. Yeah, at
Jim's
Jim's
house.
old house. Yeah. But yeah, the obstacle course is that's my favorite for sure.
You usually do pretty well on the obstacle
I feel
course.
really strong about that.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite events though? Like some of the most memorable ones is because we do it up at the lake. We can literally do events like who can hold their breath the longest underneath the pier. That's been a pretty memorable
Most
one.
memorable for me is foaling.
Oh yeah. I wonder why.
I threw the ball so hard, I just threw my shoulder out of socket.
Which is nothing new. Like we've talked on the show before how you used to do that. Here's my question.
Yep.
I invited you and your wife to be on a volleyball team, and she said you're not going to push the limits. Isn't that the whole reason you got the surgery in the first place? Is to play sports?
The reason I got the surgery is to be able to play with my girls and not be held back then. But the reality is surgery is surgery, so I still like when athletes talk about. Do you remember when Paul George broke his knee during the Olympics or whatever?
Well, he broke his.
Derek
fibula.
Rose. I
Yeah.
mean, there's been multiple people get hurt. Not saying I'm anywhere on the level of those guys, but like the biggest issue is probably getting your mental confidence back after nursing it and protecting it for so. And for them, it's one thing. For me, I just dealt with it for 15 years.
Yeah.
And just was.
Well, one of the times you threw it out was playing volleyball. You went up for a block, and all you did was keep your hands up, and the ball went into your arms, which is a pretty light ball.
Oh, yeah.
And that threw it out.
Was this like a 6-foot net? Like how high was the net?
That's true.
I got ups. It's but yeah, so I think I just spent so much time protecting it. It still feels limited mobility wise, not 100%, but yeah, it just not worth the risk to be on your sand volleyball team. But I appreciated the offer.
Yeah, that's definitely the big what's new coming up.
Reactionary sports is the issue. If it's reactionary, if I can make the decision before I do it, no big deal.
So bowling, you're fine.
Bowling should be great. Foaling should also be fine. Actually, maybe I'm not fine. Maybe I'm unprotected.
So what are some of the events, Marcus?
I think you'll be okay.
Give us,
I think that you'll be all right. I think you'll be all right.
Tell us about it.
yeah. What do we got?
There's an obstacle course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the people who plan it obviously never tell everybody else so they can have a leg up. So that's
In the
why we're
past,
making
though,
jokes.
It's
we've done-
themed. How about that? It's themed.
Oh, is
We
it
have-
Ken and Barbie?
We have a
kind of thing?
themed Olympics.
Oh, okay. So we're bringing a pommel horse.
We have a themed Olympics.
Are you prepping a stash for the weekend?
Yeah.
I feel like you are.
Yeah, I grew it out this week.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's a month. Good.
yeah.
So we've done Mario Kart before. We've done.
Are we all stashing it again?
We can. I think you have you definitely have an advantage to the weekend if you grow out your mustache. I think it's been scientifically proven.
We did a hot dog eating contest
Mm-hmm.
recently that we had a friend Logan obliterate everyone and just went full dunk water like you see
Oh, yeah.
on. That was nuts.
That was gross.
The
Very
beer
nice.
stein hold, where you have to hold it
Beer
at
stein hold was
90
cool.
degrees.
Gibson thought he found a loophole, and I think he did. But if it wasn't Chris, I think we would have been like, "Whoa!" But because it was Chris, we're like, "You can't do that." But I think he did find a loophole. Other favorite events, pump pass kick, not a favorite, but we've done it.
Mm-hmm.
Really bad. You don't
Free
know.
throws, three-point shooter. All the sports you could think of, we've done something with it. Football,
Home run derby,
baseball. Yeah, actually,
Shipping.
one year we did it at the
We
church.
did do home run derby.
And we did home run derby followed up with a PK, and that was a really cool little 2-point.
So was it
two
you
events.
were a goalie and
You were a goalie, and to get stops, and you had to save for every single other person, and you got a PK,
Yeah.
and that was your total points on every single person.
the quiz, Elliot and Kyle's quizzes every year, very good. Primarily football.
Which is based on real football and our league history.
Yeah.
which makes it
the
really
league
fun.
history one was pretty fun last year.
Yeah,
I will say that we tried to do fun events that would be very intriguing and create a fair amount of trash talking, but that wouldn't take up crazy amounts of time.
Yeah. There have been some events that take a really long time. Like even like the chipping contest sometimes takes a really long time.
The football in a trash can, I believe, was just because of Jim, right? That was just
yeah. So in the first year,
down that hill.
in the first year, we set up a trash can at the bottom of a hill, but it was angled away from you.
Yep.
So nearly an impossible shot.
Not
throwing
for all of
this
us.
football down.
Some of us did just fine.
And you only got 2 throws, and then you had to run down, pick it up, and then run back up the hill. And we had someone almost die. Year one.
And this is a league where you never feel bad for anyone
No,
else.
no.
We all at some point were like, just call it.
Yeah, should we
Just
stop?
call it. Ultimate Frisbee course that year too, I think. Right?
Was that year?
We
or
did
the
like
year
one
before?
hole
We've done
or
it a
something
couple
like that.
times.
Yeah.
One hole. Other highlights of Draft Olympics weekend is obviously the draft itself.
The punishment.
Also punishment happens.
Yeah,
Which
you and I shared that punishment last year.
historically, a 5K or a shared 5K dressed in whatever last year's champion chooses to dress you in.
Yeah.
So I think Kyle hit Goodwill hard for ours. He did pretty well.
Hey, those guys that were up on the roof, they scared me a little bit.
Watching you
We had
guys
some-
run the 5K.
We had some North Webster hillbillies
Yeah.
roofing that house that were watching us, and
Yeah.
I was a little worried.
Well, there were some people.
some Confederate flag waving.
Yeah.
There were some people angry about it, which I'm not mad.
I mean,
Well, we definitely don't-
We were running in
What's funny is
skirts.
I don't
Yeah.
know what would be better. We follow you in a golf cart in another car, like honking and bringing as much attention to you as possible.
Yeah.
But I don't know what would be funnier is if we didn't do that at all and you guys were just running alone like that. That would be pretty funny too.
I think it'd be really fun to make it would take a lot of effort, but to make a whole thing of it some year where we invite a bunch of different leagues and all of the losers, and you make it an actual 5K.
like a 5K for the losers.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
that's
interesting.
Drew wearing an adult diaper and a Saquon Barkley jersey actually
Because
was pretty awesome.
the year Saquon was the reason he
That
lost.
was pretty great. I really liked
Yeah,
that one.
that was good.
as well.
We have been doing the 5K works. The 5K through the little town of North Webster really does work.
Francis might run a 5:45 pace for
Yeah.
this
I
thing.
think Francis is going to dog it a little bit.
No.
because he wants to save.
He'll save
himself.
some gas for. That's the whole point. Is you got to save some gas for the
because
Olympics.
before the Olympics, yeah, that's rough.
Else he's going to be right back where he started.
Never hurt me, but to each their own. It's fun. I did only have to run 1.75. But there are a bunch of stories like that from the DeMar Hamlin game.
Yeah.
I've seen them pop up where people shared punishments because of not having an official thing that week. Any other final parting thoughts on draft weekend? The draft itself, we go old school. We go,
Stickers on
actual
a-
sticker board.
Yeah.
Most people are completely analog. No, definitely not looking up things in the moment. I think we're
Oh, I'm
almost.
100% doing that.
That's
The
because
only
you
thing
come
I'm doing
unprepared
is I'm
most of the time.
googling.
100%.
I'm googling Stephon
Is
Diggs
they
injury.
are- yeah, because
That's all
some
I'm-
of them get injured literally 5 minutes before you pick them.
How rude.
Yeah,
How rude.
happens all the time every year. That's literally the last thing I do before I pick somebody every
Yeah.
single time. Look up injury news.
Are we drafting Saturday night?
Yes.
Yeah, which we did do that last year. I think.
We've done it half the time. Yeah.
Not bad. It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. Should be good. Welcome to the Cover Podcast.
Thanks.
I am. Hey, you're welcome. One of your hosts, Brett Wiggins, and as always, to my left,
Marcus Mangus.
and to my right.
Sir Remington Ramsey.
That's right. What are we covering? Ram. What do we got?
Today, by the way, I never looked up what elegy means.
Elegy.
Elegy? What does it mean, Mangus?
It would be.
Hillbilly Elegy is the name of the book.
Don't you give an elegy at a?
That's a eulogy.
That's a eulogy, but it's related. So I believe.
Yeah,
that it's
wasn't finished, Ram.
I believe that it's a long, kind of sorrowful poem.
Oh. So it's like
often
it's almost like a
given-
film noir in book form.
I think that the idea behind Hillbilly Elegy is him saying, "I am part of this hillbilly culture, but I've come out of it, right? So this, like, the hillbilly side of me, it'll always be there. In some ways, he might even long for it.
I think he'd
be thankful for it.
Sure.
I think that's right. If I'm wrong, email us at thecoverpod@gmail.com and tell me all the things. Or
Marcus has had 10 PBRs already.
I have had.
He's drank $4 of PBR.
I've had a third of a PBR.
Well, instead of just wondering what Marcus thinks about the book, the back of the book says, from growing up in poor Rust Belt town and witnessing the struggles of America's white working class to enlisting as a Marine to graduating from Yale Law School, Vance in Hillbilly Elegy offers passionate analysis of a culture in crisis and an unlikely personal journey that informed and transformed him into a senator from Ohio and then President Trump's running mate. So this was, by the way, this had to...
This is the second edition.
This back cover had to be...
Because he doesn't mention being...
He doesn't mention either of those things.
No.
He doesn't mention being a senator or the running mate.
No.
I feel like your back cover says something different than mine.
Oh, really? So maybe this is where yours starts. In Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance tells a true story of what social, regional, and class decline feels like when born with it hanging around your neck. The Vance family story began with hope in post-war America. JD's grandparents were dirt poor and in love and moved north from Kentucky's Appalachia region to Ohio in the hopes of escaping a dreadful poverty around them. But as the family saga of Hillbilly Elegy plays out, we learn that JD's grandparents, aunt, uncle, sister, and most of all, his mother struggled profoundly with the demands of the new middle-class life, never fully escaping the legacy of abuse, alcoholism, poverty, and trauma so characteristic of the part of America. With piercing honesty, Vance shows how he himself still carries around the demons of his chaotic family history. A deeply moving memoir with its share of humor and vivid, colorful figures, Hillbilly Elegy is the story of how upward mobility really feels. And it's an urgent and troubling meditation on the loss of the American dream for the large segment of this country.
Oh, there you go.
So is that where...
That's probably the elegy part, right?
Talking about
the loss of
the
that American dream for that part of that lower middle class.
So is that second part where your book starts?
The second part is written slightly different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, second edition. I mean, that's smart. You get a bestseller, and then your second edition comes out with everything that's happened since then. And to be honest, you one of your questions is what I know going into it. I knew he was the running mate. That's all I knew. And then I was sitting at your house and you were talking about Hillbilly Elegy. Had no idea that was a movie or a book or anything until 3 weeks ago.
So also, is there an extra foreword in that possibly?
By Megan Dahm. There's a ton of, so in the front of the book, there's pages of praise. I mean, everyone and anyone, Paris Review, Daily Beast, Huffington Post.
He did a very big tour.
Sure.
This is pre him being a senator.
We should look up, though, how many books he's sold since getting announced as a running mate.
It's a lot.
Oh, dude, I bet he's crushing it.
It was, I'm pretty sure it was like the best-selling book, best-selling...
It's a good book. I mean, with or without
movie.
that. Yeah.
Best-selling movie?
Yeah.
Like in theaters? Because I don't even think it...
I believe it was
I just saw that they were like the streaming.
I want to say I watched it streaming during COVID season.
Sure.
Is when I
That's when it came
Howard
out.
movie.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
It's good, but much like everything else we've covered, it only takes a very small segment of what the book actually covers.
Very small. Very focused on mom, I feel, and only.
Because I got halfway through the book, he starts talking about his faith, and he starts talking about his dad's side of the family, and like none of that is in the movie.
I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Right.
I didn't know any of it. Okay. 30-second slam poetry for me. Marcus is freaking out, man.
He's freaking out, man. You're freaking out, man.
You know what? I'll buy you a little bit of time. He said what I knew going into it, reading the book. So I watched the movie. I want to say Riley and I watched it maybe 2 years ago. I don't even know if it came out by then, but it feels like 2 years ago. It was streaming. I think it was probably listed as top 10 streaming on whatever platform it was on.
I mean, it's got some big names in it. Glenn Close and Amy Adams are in it. And Amy Adams,
the mom, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She crushes it.
I want to say just the title alone got me so curious, even though I clearly didn't know what elegy meant. But
So it did come out during COVID, by the way. It came out in 2020.
So this was straight
I'm pretty
to
sure
streaming.
it went straight to streaming.
It had, a lot of that stuff did. Unless you're Kevin Hart, and didn't Sony like lose a bunch of his movie and they just had to give it away for free? Sad day. Okay, Marcus, what'd you know going into it?
Not much. This is one of the reasons I kind of wanted to read it, because
Of the three of us,
we have an election coming up.
Of the three of us, you are a little bit more involved in politics and at least do your research.
Yeah, he's
did
in
you
the
know?
know.
Did you know about JD Vance ahead of time? Like, did you
A little. Yeah.
really just?
Not a lot.
What is his MO as? He's a senator, yes. Is he senator?
Yes.
In Ohio.
Yeah.
What is he? What do people say about it?
Well, interestingly, like when this book came out, this book came out I think in 2018.
Wow, they get making it a movie real fast.
Yeah, it was 2016 I think when he wrote it. So maybe it was 2016 when it came out.
I mean, that's 2016.
Right, it's right before Trump got elected.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons that it was so popular was because people saw it as, not I don't know if it's a treatise or what, but people saw it as, this is how
That's
these
how it happened.
white
Right.
working class people who had always voted Democrat flipped for Trump, right?
He's kind of explaining it without knowing he's explaining
the way
it
that
too,
he
right?
describes it there. So I don't know if Trump was elected yet or not by the time that he finished the book, but.
Well, let's think about this.
What
way.
I know
the
is
election
that-
was November of 2016.
What I know is that before Trump was elected first in 2016, he was very much like a never Trumper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, he saw the writing on the wall of his own journey, and writing a book like this, timing wise, is pretty smart.
Totally.
Regardless of if he gets the nod for VP, eventually that's what he's looking for.
Yeah, he
And
for
so
sure wanted to
to
go into
have a book
politics.
out there explaining why he went from Democrat to red is
So you're saying the copyright in there says 2016?
yes.
Then I'd say 99% of the book was written before Trump gets elected, because that's November of
Yeah.
2016.
Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It was.
So he's
but it doesn't matter if Trump's.
but it became so popular because
Right.
so many people.
Well, that's my point. It's not like
were
he was like,
how-
Trump
'cause
won.
Trump felt like he came out of the blue.
Right. It's not like he was like, Trump won, let me explain it. He literally is explaining it without realizing he's explaining
Yeah, and
what
he
happened.
was very much skeptical. Like didn't want to vote for Trump, but he says now that he changed his tune because Trump really won him over. So and then when he got elected, he ran a very like Trump-esque campaign, very politically right, but I'll think of the word.
He's a good writer though. So here's what I was thinking. I mean, he probably was writing his memoirs and then went back and wrote a couple things. Like he's like, you know what? When I talk about Grandma and Grandpa, that'd be a good time to like talk about why we were so hardcore Democrat. And then like he probably pumped that in when he decided
Right.
he wanted to talk a little bit more about switching parties.
We'll talk about it more. I was very impressed with the way that he described certain political figures that just from a very unbiased middle, like, okay, now I don't know if he feels that way now. Maybe from the podium he speaks differently, but when he wrote the book, it was like, oh, okay, that's
Sure.
fair. Okay, 30-second slam poetry. I really got to start preparing for these because this is getting really hard. Here we go. 30 seconds on the stopwatch. Also, that means Marcus has 30 seconds. Are you ready, Marcus?
No.
Oh, man. Get it ready. Ready, set, and go. Boy! Drinking Mountain Dew. Kentucky, Ohio, Kentucky, Ohio. Mom, grandma, all of it. Grandma, grandpa saved it. Failing out of school. Gonna leave. All of a sudden, gets into a school. Gets into Ohio State. Gets a stable situation. Marines instead. Comes back. Law school. Finds the girl. Goes through some really messed up stuff with his mom because she's addicted to drugs. Can't stop telling her yes, but also can't tell her no. That's my 30 seconds.
Well done.
Oh, man.
You know, it's interesting. The part about the Marine Corps is typically if someone writes a book and they've served in the military, especially the Marines, the book is about that. I don't know that I've read many books where someone served in the Marines and a big chunk of the book wasn't about that, but this book really wasn't. That wasn't the focal point. He's proud,
It was
but
more how
really
he
just
used
very
that.
I think it speaks to how traumatizing the rest of his life
was.
Yeah. Because to
I
your
mean,
point,
every single biography we've read they spend a big chunk of something developmentally before the age of 16 that had a profound effect on their life enough to write about it and have that be the focal point for a big chunk of their book. Every single one of them.
So we've said this up till now that our podcast isn't popular enough to carry a movie. Like, we have to pick good movies.
Yeah.
Are we about to carry this dude into the White House? Is that?
No, because our book episodes are so
Could be.
different.
Yeah. Marcus, 9 words.
Kid from Ohio survives poverty to pursue American dream.
Dude, I feel like this is a class or a game or something that you need to create. You need to get with my buddy Dan, and you need to create a game based on the nine words. You guys could have it in Target tomorrow.
Yeah, it's kind of like code word.
Yeah, it's
code
there's something
Dan,
there.
just email me at
Dan,
thecoverpod@gmail.com.
Dan, since you're listening
We'll
to
get
every
it going.
episode,
gmail.com.
We'll just call the game The Cover, and then someone has to do slam poetry, and someone has to do 1 in 9.
I have something really awesome.
But
to share
the
with you guys.
card gives you a movie, and you have 30 seconds to come up with 9 words.
and then they
Ooh.
vote
And then
or something.
and then if you don't come up
and
with
the words
9
you can't. So
words,
it's basically Mad Gab or whatever game where you can't say certain words, but you have to get someone to say something.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's
no,
an interesting idea. Like,
so the cover
only
version-
you
Code
can
word.
see the
That's-
card.
Yeah.
Only you can see the card. You have 9 words. You have 9 words.
But
and then
there's also
everybody
some words
else
you're not
has
allowed to
guess
say.
your movie.
Yes,
Have
that's
you
great.
seen 4 Christmases?
Yes.
Where his mom's buzzing him.
Yes.
Can't say movie. Can't say movie. Every time I watch that, I laugh so hard because that's my mom.
That was a movie I prejudged for whatever reason, and then
No.
we rewatched
That's
it
a classic.
this Christmas. It's so
That's
good.
top
It's
3.
so fun.
So hold
that's
on,
top
who's-
3 Christmas movies.
Who's the
for
guy
me.
that
Whoa,
plays?
that's bold.
Yeah.
Who's the guy that plays the really mean brother?
Well, Favreau.
Favreau
Oh,
is
Favreau
awesome
and
in
Tim
that
McGraw.
movie.
And Tim
McGraw is the other one.
Oh
Yeah.
man, Tim McGraw before he goes through his body transformation.
I don't know.
Or did he
Yes.
gain weight for the?
That's why I don't know. I don't know if
So
he did
his
gain
daughter,
weight for
Tim,
it.
so in Tim's health book, which is awesome, amazing.
It's not
book.
a health book. It's just his biography. That's definitely one we should do. Grit and Grace.
You
by Tim
think you
McGraw.
view that? It's a biography, but it. Okay. Anyway,
That's
regardless.
what the interesting thing about it is. The entire book, he's talking mostly about his health journey, but like it is his biography.
For sure. So in the book, though, he talks about going to the movies with his daughter, and he talks about a preview for a movie of him comes in on the screen, and he says he's funny in the movie, and he's obviously like overweight, and his face is a little red because of drinking and stuff. And his daughter goes, "Geez, Dad," and that was
That
like
was
the
it.
day he was
That
like,
was all it took.
"All right, I gotta." I think Faith also said something to him at some point, not like telling him ultimatum, but like something.
I feel like a lot of country stars go through that period of time where
Dude, being on the road is hard.
Yeah,
like I'm
they
a
don't
baby
care.
being on the road for 3 days, and I make excuses about not working out. Could you imagine being on the road 100 days a year, 150 days a year?
Our buddy Drew said something pretty interesting that I thought was a good take on traveling. He says when he travels, he tries to lose 1 pound a day.
That's his mindset. I want to
and
lose.
that's his
yep.
mindset. And I don't know. I mean, he probably doesn't hit that, but that just changes the decisions that you make when you're on the road.
Yeah. Shout out Tim McGraw. Grit and Grace is awesome. I don't know if it's podcast worthy. But
You don't think Grit and Grace is podcast worthy? It's an awesome biography. What about it?
I read it because I wanted to get in shape. That's the only.
You think he wrote?
That's the only
book
sphere through which I read
No,
it. I
you need to reread
I
it.
literally read it waiting for like, all right, when's he gonna give me? And I learned everything, but I literally read everything from the standpoint of I'm gonna change this in my life.
Yeah, but now you're a reader.
But
now you read
right,
biographies.
and he talks about being on tour. He talks about his faith.
I think that's why it worked. That's why I actually did it. That's why people actually probably follow the last half of the book is all of his exercises, all of his everything. I think that's why I actually committed to it, because I was like, this is proof this worked for this guy.
Yeah.
I was
great.
thinking about doing the Matthew McConaughey. Just eat 1 apple, run a bunch of miles,
And
and
smoke
then drink
cigarettes.
as much wine as I want.
Well, no, lettuce with ketchup.
That was different. That was
okay.
different.
This was Dallas Buyers
That was
Club.
yes.
Yeah,
When he,
got it.
well, yes, yeah, Dallas Buyers Club.
Fantastic. Man, McConaughey is so good. Love that. I think we inspired maybe dozens of people to
Droves.
read or listen to his
Droves.
memoir. Marcus, we already talked about it, but PBR. Why'd you choose PBR?
Well, I said to my wife, I said, hey, what would people in Crawfordsville drink? And she said, Ice House. And I said, no, but I'll get something cheap. And I got the PBR. I was a little worried about it, but you know what? It's going down. It's not too bad. Maybe my hillbilly's coming out.
I think we all.
I even have my fishing shirt on. So
we were all lucky enough to grow up in towns with access to hillbillyism.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
yeah, much of this hits home for sure.
Yeah. Which
No
is
doubt about
interesting because it's like I always it's like I thought Elkhart was unique in we have like hillbilly, but we also have like ghetto at the same time, but
Yeah.
that's not.
But I was thinking about
to
like
those towns.
I was thinking about the definition of hillbilly, right? And like it's literally people who grow up in the hills, and why that even became a thing. And it's literally just, it comes, at least just based on my own understanding from geography and how hard it is to create a town around living in the mountains, around living in hills. And so you want to create a town where it's easy access for utilities. And so people who choose to live in a place where it's just hard to get those things don't naturally have conversations with as many people. They don't have, the same resources. And then, hillbilly
Well, I
becomes
think
a
for
thing.
the purposes of this too, it's important to know like yes, those rural towns, people are different, right? And he talks about these family ties, family loyalty, hillbilly law. We're hill people, right? His Mama Blanton talks about them being hill people that then are transplanted in waves because there's just no jobs. Right? And then these factories,
That
right?
have the jobs.
The factories in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio actively recruited these people. And so you get these towns where there's large amounts of people that came from the hills. And so you have lower income hill people, and that's kind of how he's describing this hillbilly culture
Right.
in Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan.
It's pretty interesting. He seemed pretty hell-bent on explaining that type of culture isn't limited to what America thinks is African American culture, and it's like definitely spread widely in white, underprivileged hillbilly towns. Like he kept going back to that analogy, like almost apologetically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he wants to make sure that people understand, in his mind, I believe, yes, like issues of race exist, but we also have to
There's extreme poverty.
We also have to look at how poverty impacts and affects people, and
Regardless of
those
race.
places in Appalachia, right? Appalachia, they are as poor as it gets. Like it is tough living. Right?
Yeah, I feel like he really eloquently belabored that point so early that I never, like, I understood what he was saying and what he wasn't saying from the first couple of chapters on, in terms of who he was talking about, what groups he was referring to.
Yeah, he's talking about a very specific subset of American culture.
Yep. We already getting into what made us think. I thought it was cool right from the jump. He starts talking. He recognizes that, and he comes back to it in the book. There are so many people that without them in his life, he ends up just like so many other people from his hometown. And then he ends up talking about the grandparents and how a lot of these kids in these towns with parents who are addicted to drugs, hopping from job to job, in and out of jail, if there is a stable grandparent in their life, that can be their saving grace. And then he took it a step further and talked about how, is it CPS? Is that Child Protective Services? If they step in and get too involved, that a grandparent doesn't qualify and they'll go into foster care.
Yeah, because they don't have like a foster license.
How old was he? He's talking about speaking at a court trial. I want to say he's preteen, like 12, 11, 10.
10
and
or 11, I
he
think.
actively understands he can't say too much about his mom
Because she'll be cuffed.
and then he's not going to go to grandma. He understands that I'm going to go into foster care.
Yeah.
It's like, that's wild, but that's just an understood part of his life.
Well, not only that, it's so rampant that the neighbor girl at their grandma's house, the neighbor kid would come over underfed,
two-year-old
wandering around the streets, coming up to get food and love,
and diapers changed,
and she calls Child Protective Services, and they don't do anything about it, which tells me that it's such a big deal that there's worse cases that they need to take care of, and as long as the mom is in the house, they say just take them home. I mean, that's how crazy it is. Like, you think about why downtown Indy and the east side of Indy is so on the news all the time for crime, and you wonder, like, there's certain parts of the city where they really just don't care how fast you go, and minor issues because they're dealing so much with much bigger things.
And then you get to a Carmel, a Fishers, wherever,
you
and
get
they
stopped
have nothing
for going
else to do.
5 miles over the speed limit.
It's that's wild. That's something that I had considered, but like those specific examples made me go, oh, that's.
I'll tell you what, though, you definitely feel safe. Like, in the times where you're frustrated that you're getting pulled over for stupid things, and you're like, don't you have something better to do? You are very grateful because you can't say, you're supposed to be keeping me safe, because they are keeping us safe. Like,
Yeah. Marcus, anything piggyback on that?
Well, you said Mama. I just thought it was interesting. He says,
Mama, Papa.
Let's see here. Chapter 2.
What's funny is, like, I have some broken families. Like, I have some split, blended families from the grandparent level, and at Portland, Indiana. And my cousins on that side that are cousins by marriage all called my grandma and grandpa Mama and Papa.
Oh, really?
From, like, what we consider hillbilly country.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is...
not a good comparison to this Mama and Papa. I would some dramatic differences.
Well, I mean, I don't think that. Well, hillbillies like to add their own twist to many words. We call minnows minners, crayfish crawdads. Hollow is defined as a valley or basin, but I've never heard the word hollow unless I've had to explain it to a friend what I mean when I say holler. Right? Other people have all kinds of names for their grandparents, grandma, nana, pop, granny, and so on. Yet I've never heard anyone say mama, pronounced mama, or papa outside of our community. And I'll tell you what, I mean, that's a very common in Indiana.
Yeah, northern Indiana especially.
Well, not just northern Indiana, but southern Indiana as well. But I mean, I think, like, Jessica's from Crawfordsville. Jessica, she calls her grandma Mama, right? My kids call her Mama. They've got a couple of different mamas.
JD didn't make it too far north, did he?
I'm just saying that, you think about all of these towns, like, at least around us, and I don't know, I haven't looked at any demographics, but I'm guessing that most of the people that listen are right now, at least, are around here. And, you look at something like
besides Minnesota.
A Crawfordsville or an Anderson, you spend a lot of time in Anderson. Yeah. You think about the percentage of students who are on reduced pay lunch, for instance, and it's astronomically high. And that's exactly the people that he's talking about. And that's in small towns across Indiana, across the board.
Sure.
Right? Where there's these just many times single family households, broken families, whatever. And I just thought that was really interesting. And he teed that up from the beginning, and he's talking about these hillbillies, and I'm like, man, that could be Bremen. Like many of the people that I grew up with, that could be Crawfordsville. I was lucky in that, like, my parents, although they never made very much money, were very stable. We're together. We were in church every Sunday. Many of the things that he's talking about that he missed, like, I didn't have to deal with any of the crap that he talked about, but I saw it a lot. So I think a lot of this really hit home.
So my mom always called her mom, and this will tell you about the relationship my mom had with her parents. My mom called her mom Jan because that is her name. So she always called her Jan. So do you want to know what I called my grandma on my mom's side, starting from when I could talk? Jan. And she got pissed. She hated it. Don't call me that.
Oh, man.
It was good.
So your mom never corrected you?
No. No.
Did she do it out of disrespect?
I think it's I think my mom was a very rebellious. Actually, I know my mom was a very.
Do you know at what
rebellious-
point she started calling her mom Jan?
Probably, if I had to guess, 13, 14, yeah. And then it just stuck. It probably became an endearing, like, that's their relationship. They were close, but then when I started doing it, she probably did. She's like, I didn't think this far.
It always made me uncomfortable when my grandpa would talk about his dad as his old man, my old man. Just because I always thought that was so disrespectful. And
Oh, really?
yeah,
Okay.
but he, like, whenever he described him, he had a really bad relationship with the guy, and that's the only person I knew that called him his old man. So
Oh, it's interesting. So you just attached that.
yeah,
got
yeah.
it.
But to this day, I've never heard someone call their dad my old man and actually have like good feeling intentions before. It might exist. I've just never heard it.
I thought going into that whole community, he starts talking about the issue with people feeling like things are done to them versus because of them. And the example he uses is young guy. He talks about working at a tile warehouse.
Yeah.
Is this during college, high school? This is, I think, during.
It's actually, he's been done with the military. He's
Okay.
done with college. It's right before he
Got
goes
it.
to law school.
This guy has a pregnant wife. It sounds like the owner of the tile place is kind of doing him a favor. Girlfriend, yeah. And he just doesn't show up for work constantly. He's taking 30-minute breaks. They played a game in the warehouse.
How long is he going to be in the bathroom?
And they would like announce every 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And the dude gets fired, and it's like, how could you do this to me?
Don't you know that I have a pregnant girlfriend? And
Dude, don't
How
you
could
know
you-
you have a pregnant girlfriend at home, right? Like,
Yeah.
But we all, I mean, I think we've all experienced people with that attitude.
yeah.
And yeah, there's definitely.
The thing is that exists at the city level too. That's not a hillbilly thing. That's just a people thing.
Well, I think that's what he's saying though. Is that it's not just in these like inner cities.
Yeah.
It's also in these other communities.
That has got to be an American culture thing though, because you go to other places. I mean, even Mexico, like Mexican people, at least in the U.S., work extremely harder by culture than Americans do.
Crazy story. We're getting our basement finished, so it was day to do drywall. It's probably, how many square feet would you say my basement is?
I don't know, 1,000.
1,000 square feet. They got the drywall, all the drywall, carried downstairs and hung in 8 hours. Blown away.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing dudes. Amazing. Yeah. So to your point, extremely hardworking.
I mean, you go to other
amazing.
countries and they just laugh at Americans for stuff like this, right? And like the whole Wally epidemic. I saw a reel yesterday that had like pictures of real people. Like I think it was AI generated, but it showed what is totally possible with the obesity epidemic and technology, to where you don't have to get out of your wheelchair to experience life.
Yeah.
And it's just
dude.
wild.
Yeah. That's a slippery slope that we might regret going down VR stuff for sure. So
I guess to piggyback on this, one of the things that he talks about there is, hey, you know, a lot of people felt like the American dream required forward momentum and that manual labor was honorable, but it was their generation's work, not the next generation's. They wanted these people to go to college. And then he says, but there was no sense that failing to achieve higher education would bring shame or any other consequences. The message wasn't explicit. The teachers didn't tell us that we were too stupid or poor to make it, right? But nevertheless, it was always around us. And then I thought this was interesting. Like the air that we breathed. No one in our families had gone to college. Older friends and siblings were perfectly content to stay in Middletown, regardless of their career prospects. We knew no one at a prestigious out-of-state school, and everyone knew at least one young adult who was underemployed or didn't have a job at all, right? And so he said, you know, that kind of like underachieving was just like the air that they breathe, right? Like it is who we are. Like, yeah, we're probably going to go work in Crawfordsville, it's Donnelly's, right? In Indiana or up in Bremen where I grew up, I'm going to go work at the RV place.
yeah,
or go
it's
paint
Coachman,
RVs.
it's
or
Heartland RV, it's
whatever.
Yeah, one of the 1,000 pontoon places, boat places.
You're saying that people who grow up in those towns feel like they have a fallback, and therefore they justify or just feel like they can kind of live life however they want because ultimately that's where they're going to end up.
That's exactly right.
And I think it sounds like his mama and papa just assumed that their kids would be better off, meaning JD's mother and her siblings. And then when that didn't happen, they're like, what?
Well, especially because the mom was the valedictorian of her school.
Yeah.
He's like really frustrated halfway through, saying it didn't work out for her. She was the smartest person. What's the point of me being smart?
Yeah.
I think part of it too was he describes his mama. I can't use her language, but she says, dude, some hilarious.
Yeah,
quotes
lots
by
of
her.
language in this book.
In a different life, on a different podcast, sharing the quotes from this book would be phenomenal.
We could just do that. And
so
laugh.
It was uncomfortable at times how, like, when you watch Glengarry Glen Ross and they are so aggressively mean and cursing at each other, that's how this book was, but it's their family.
Yeah.
I mean, it was uncomfortable at times.
But it was their family, and then it was like they'd hug them the next second. You know, it was so he talks about her complaining about people that Marcus just described, that I just described, the young guy with the pregnant girlfriend at the warehouse. Yeah. Saying, like, doing those things, but also being like, oh, all these people using food stamps, taking our money. They're complaining about it, but then also using the system at the exact same time. Like, there's this front they're putting on.
Or that guy the guy that couldn't get the job, but then, or the guy that quit the job for whatever reason, right? Because it was too hard or something like that.
So basically, living on welfare.
Went home and blamed Obama's economy for
using
not being
food
able to
stamps
get a
for
job.
food and then welfare checks for booze.
Yes, but JD talks about his mama saying this, but then also using government funds to do certain things as well. Yeah, so
this is a quote. This is the first chapter 1. Grandma says, "There's nothing lower than the poor stealing from the poor." Like she has this code in her head of the way life should be, and like you see this too. Like we've brought this up a few times, but in certain communities, whatever the code of the community is, really trumps whatever state or federal law there is, because everyone just keeps hush hush about it. Like they said a couple times in the book, so people would just almost go missing, and people.
Well, no, they did. They killed a guy and left him in. I don't remember what he did,
but no one asked any questions.
Nobody asked questions. The police found him and were like, "Yeah, suspicious death."
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's governing
what did he call it? He called it hillbilly justice.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know this is extreme. Part of me is like, there's some good in that, not to that extreme.
There's some accountability in that.
Man.
I don't know if you can go so far as to say there's some good. There's accountability. There's accountability everywhere without killing somebody.
But I mean, that's how you get the Hatfields and the McCoys, which is very much a hillbilly justice.
But I think
that's the problem with the Amish. That is the argument against the Amish, is that they don't pay taxes and they govern themselves. And so, like, it's tough. There's a ton of Amish where you're from.
Oh yeah,
up north. And one of the best meals I've ever had, actually, a few of the best meals I've ever had were Amish, and some of the
Essenhouse,
some of the kindest people.
Yeah,
but man, some scary things happen in that community, very similar to the hillbilly community, where it's like, they have. I mean, you've seen the movies where the one sheriff is in on it too. Like, he just knows the town runs itself.
Sure. Yeah, I think we've come so far away from that, though. Like, it would be nice to know that there could be some kid acting up in public, and me as an adult that's not his father could say, "Hey, stop doing that," and not immediately go, "Oh, there's going to be some really angry mom come yell at me for even speaking to her son."
I feel like I kind of grew up that way, though.
Wait, you're saying what I'm describing?
Yeah, but we're definitely not in that
I'm saying we're not there anymore. Like you're
not here.
Yeah.
Not in Perfect Town, USA.
Dude, it's crazy, man. Like but to that point where there's many assumptions that could have been made about all the adults around us 20 years ago that just we can't make anymore.
I'll say this though, we were this spring, I think we were up grocery shopping up near my hometown, and our 1-year-old is just like impossible in this grocery store.
Tell me about it.
Like, he was being a terrorist. And he had gotten this ball, and we were like, okay, at least you've got this ball. And he's like toddling around while we're trying to get stuff loaded up into the cart, right? And he hits the ball over to this lady, and this lady just looks at him and like gives the ball back and then plays with him for a second and those kinds of things. And I remember thinking to myself, there is a 0% possibility that happens where we live, right? Like, we'll get like dirty looks or something for like letting our kid walk down the aisle like 12 feet away from me. You know, like,
I think people are so much
more friendly.
People are so much more busy here too versus
well, it's that mixed with, you know, horror stories of bad people too. Like this weekend I told Charlie, because we're up at a cabin and there's 3 cabins next to it, and we have some friends that they're girls' age, and I told her literally the hour before, we don't go into people's homes. You're not going into their home. You can play outside. Well, it starts to rain, and I come outside and I can't find her. And she's a step inside of the screen tent, and I can see her, or the screen and porch. So I bring her back home, and I scare the daylights out of her, and I say, I don't care what the other person says. I don't care what the parents say. If I give you a rule, that trumps literally anything they say. You walk home in the rain unless I otherwise note it. So she cried, and she couldn't be with her friends, and she got wet, and she was embarrassed, and all these things. So I let her chill for 30 minutes. Then I came and I sat her down, and I said, do you understand why that's important? And she didn't quite get it. And I was explaining to her, I was like, we don't know if there's another person in there. We don't know if they have weapons. We don't know if they have dogs. We don't know anything. And on top of it, some of the nicest people, now she goes, but they're such nice people. And I was like, I think they are too, but some of those people aren't good people either and can hurt you. And so like it didn't click with her. And I'm actually really glad, the reason I'm bringing up the story right now, I'm really glad that it happened with our friends that you know, are good people, or that she thinks are good people. Yeah. So that next time when it's, you know, clearly bad, like people are smoking or cursing or bad movies on, like she knows I cannot be here. What if that was the first time and she thinks, oh, I can't go into bad people's homes, and she doesn't tell me, well, I can go into good people's homes. Now she's going to justify. So I'm actually really glad it happened with people that she actually thinks, so I can have that conversation ahead of time. But it was really scary. Like, it was a scary thing that I'm glad we addressed, but stuff like that, we talk about why societies become less friendly and things like that. It's because of not only just busyness and all that, but there really are horror stories of bad things that can happen.
It's parents that overtrust their teenage kids. Like, there's a neighbor that constantly is like, yeah, they can come over, we're gone, but our son is home. And it's just like, no. like
yeah, my 7-year-old daughter's gonna be there with your 16-year-old son.
So it's like, it's, and everybody obviously parents
who
differently,
thinks like that,
but I think a lot of people do, and I just I definitely have my radar up very, very high on those. And
we have kids at our house all the time, but our kids aren't allowed to go to very many other people's houses.
Yeah, because
I trust me.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't care. They don't take that into account. So, and they don't know you very well, clearly.
There was one neighbor boy. This is actually pretty funny. Because we'll always ask him, like, hey, is it okay?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you asked him or the parents?
Us, them.
Yeah.
And then this kid was like, oh yeah, it's fine, no problem, those kinds of things. He was over for like 3 days straight. Right. Then
this is a summer story.
This was a couple years ago. Haven't seen him since. His mom comes and knocks on her door, and I was like, "Hi," you know, and she's Indian, tough to like. There's a language barrier there too, and it was tough, and she was clearly very angry with me for letting him in,
for not sending him home.
And I was like, I'm so sorry, like. I understand,
Yeah.
Like it's okay with me that
But why
you're
did
mad.
it take her 3
I
days
was
to
like,
figure out where her
it's
kid is?
It's okay with me if you're mad, like
Yeah.
they were playing outside, they came inside, I wasn't, I wasn't trying to do anything or
Yeah.
and I said, "Do you want to trade phone numbers?" She's like, "Oh no, he can't come over." I was like, "No problem." And it's okay with me if somebody says that.
Yeah, totally.
It really is. Like,
But
I'm not
why did it take her
offended.
if she's going to be that angry, why did it take her 3 days?
Crazy. But I haven't seen him since. So
Wow.
I do like that, like Charlie did with you. She pressed on why.
Yeah.
Because it really forces me. I've really tried to force myself instead of being like. There are
Because I
some
said
moments
so.
where I'm like, because I said so, and
Yeah,
that's necessarily the moment. But
No.
those moments really force me to go. I have to really refine
Yeah.
why this matters.
That was a moment I want her to understand.
Yeah.
And I want to keep on having her understand. I'll probably bring it up again so that she thinks about it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want that to just go by.
All right, more things that brought us.
let's keep talking
Some
about some
thought.
parent things.
Yeah, so this is speaking of parents,
for it.
this is what I wrote down a question. Whose parents would you rather have? The parents from Educated or the parents from Hillbilly Elegy?
Oh my gosh.
Whose parents would you have rather been brought up by? Right? So let's do a quick recap of Educated. They grew up in the mountains of Idaho, Mormon but extremist, and didn't believe in modern medicine or the government at all. And conversely, growing up in Hillbilly Elegy, where your mom loves you but is becoming an addict at the time of raising you, your many dads are in and out of the picture. All of which it seemed like that was a little bit of a silver lining. Like all the men she brought into his life cared about kids and didn't hurt the relationship.
Didn't hurt him.
Didn't hurt him or
physically.
then they didn't hurt her either. They fought a lot about things, I'm sure, like most relationships.
Pushing,
But
throwing plates.
oh, they did talk about that with one, but not her dad or anything like his actual legal dad.
Which actual legal dad?
I'm sorry. He said he had a
Biological,
legal
it's
dad,
biological.
a biological
There you go,
dad.
biological dad. Yeah.
His
By the way,
biological dad,
Shaq
which is the one that had the faith, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Shaq put out a cassette way back in the day called Shaq Food Del Return, and one of the tracks is called Biological Doesn't Bother.
Whoa.
It's pretty good. I would have to say that JD Vance probably had a better shot at being saved and going to heaven
From his upbringing?
from his. Well, then I feel like Tara is just. You're just gonna ruin that girl forever for any chance.
Yeah.
Like Jesus is powerful, but if I'm going with probability on Earth, I feel like JD's got the better shot. So
what about literally just because Marcus brought this up last podcast about when we were doing a teaser for this show, saying that you're living in constant angst in survival fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
Living in the culture that JD Vance grew up in. And you're probably doing an element of that way if you're Tara as well.
Totally, if you're Tara.
Take away what they become. And I'm just talking about day to day.
Okay.
Who would you want raising you?
So I think if I get Lindsay, the older sister,
The family
in this,
dynamic.
and if I get Mama and Papa, I probably take JD Vance's
Upbringing.
I think I do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But here's the deal: if you're Tara, you don't know any of this is abnormal or wrong. Like you're just completely unaware.
It's also hard because we
he was too.
We would
he
be
said
more
all of his friends. That was what happened in relationships and things.
bringing
he
up
can-
girls is different than bringing up boys too. So we have the perspective of being a female being brought up in this family, and the dad treated the men differently, kind of.
And
Well-
JD went to a public school. There's got to be at
So
least
part of
one
the
rich
school
kid.
yeah.
Like Tara has zero. Like nothing. It's to the point where she's just like, no, my dad said something different, so you're an idiot.
Yeah.
To anyone and everyone.
The single point of truth is really tough in
Yeah.
that family.
So
so
what's option C?
Raising myself. Well, you brought up Mama and Papa, who basically Mama's the one who raised them.
Yeah.
But what's crazy to me,
Well, she was the steady force,
Right.
right? I mean, it's not like he was being raised by her.
she was the guide,
but
if you
she
will.
was. Yeah, there you go. But she was there.
Yeah.
She believed in him. She was pushing him. She was always the fallback, right? I think without Mama, we have no idea who J.D. Vance
Well, the
is.
depiction...
agreed. He would agree with that too. He would for
the
sure.
depiction of the grandparents is very positive throughout the book. It's like they were my light. They were the ones that really probably pretty much truly raised me. But a couple of times they allude to just how dark their past was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, a big reason why the daughters struggle, and, you can make an argument, is influencing her to become a drug addict or just hard with relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the craziest
Well,
parts...
his aunt and uncle, though, ended up being okay.
Yeah, but so one of the craziest dynamics is they would talk. The book talks about how bad the drinking was. That
Yeah.
he came home one day and she said, "I swear, if you come home drunk one more time, I'm gonna kill you." And
Yeah.
he does.
No.
And-
She says, "I'm going to light you on fire." I
no,
believe.
she doesn't say that. She just says,
doesn't?
"I'm going to
Okay,
kill
got
you,"
it.
but she does light him on
Yes.
fire. so that's how she decides to kill him. Is she lights him on fire, and his
Man.
sister, the daughters, put out the fire, and he suffers very little burns. And it wasn't that wasn't even the turning point. But at some point after that, the turning point, he stopped drinking, and from all accounts that I can see, changed his life completely, and then they became the people that are depicted in the book. So here's what's crazy. After his mom goes through a spell where essentially she drives 100 miles per hour
Yes. Yep.
with him in the front seat
That was
because
nuts.
she wants him to feel guilty about how he's addressing her. He jumps in the back, she slams on the brakes, and then starts to beat him, and he runs away. And we can describe the rest of the scene. It's very vivid. It's also portrayed in the movie very well.
Yep.
After this whole scene, there's a moment where Grandpa comes over
Mm-hmm.
and puts his hand on the forehead of JD and starts to cry. And basically just wants him to know he's there for him and he's sorry that this is all happening. And all I could think about when he was talking about this in that chapter is, where was that when he was raising his own kids? Like, it's so interesting
It
that,
was in
like,
the bottle. Like, he was drunk the whole time.
yeah.
I think as grandparents too, you have so much more. You've got perspective. You've got years.
I
you've
think in
got
that
more
moment
wisdom.
I think he blames himself in that moment.
Well, later
as
in
to
the
how
book, it was
Probably.
pretty late. He does say somebody tells him a story of his papa. Maybe it's when they're making the drive to bury him at the family plot or whatever the case may be. And somebody says he did at one point break down and say, "I failed her. I failed her. I failed her."
the grandpa.
The grandpa about
Yeah.
his daughter's side. Yeah, I think, and I think you see this a lot where grandparents could try to make up for their shortcomings through their grandchildren. I mean, it really truly is a clean slate, a fresh start, which I think also makes it tough for the kids, for his mom to watch. Like, his mom, literally one of her biggest beefs, the only beef she consistently brings up with her kids is, "That's not your dad, it's my dad. That's not your mom, it's my mom." I'm talking about Papa and Mama. And I think she's deeply hurt.
Also, I'm your mom,
Yeah,
not them.
Yeah, it's all backwards. Anytime the family dynamic is backwards or not what God intended, like, obviously, you see all hell break loose. It gets completely a mess and hard for the kids to understand what's going on. Your comment on Lindsay, she's kind of an unsung hero of this book.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
After that moment where it's like the peak of abuse, she's the one that gets in the cop car with him and holds him, and they say nothing and like is there as
She's several years older than
a
him.
presence. Yeah,
She's several
five
older.
years.
Well, but she's just graduating high school, and they're basically living in this house alone, and she's going to work, and I don't know if somebody, like, she really steps up and takes over for a number of
Nothing.
years.
Joe Rance was alone at 14. Was an Olympic
Well, his
rower.
dad was going to war at 14, so
That's right.
yeah. Marcus, anything else on family? Anything else?
Yeah,
on?
well, I just thought this was interesting. He said, "Mom and Bob's problems were my first introductions to marital conflict resolution. Here were the takeaways. Never speak at a reasonable volume when screaming will do. If the fight gets a little intense, it's okay to slap and punch so long as the man doesn't hit first. Always express your feelings in a way that's insulting and hurtful to your partner. If all else fails, take the kids and the dog to a local motel and don't tell your spouse where to find you. If he or she knows where the children are, he or she won't worry as much and your departure won't be as effective.
Oh, that's so painful.
You know, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this,
Yeah.
but like all of the things that you do as a parent, your relationship with your husband or wife, those things matter. Like they see those things.
Yeah.
And he struggles a ton with Usha, his wife.
I don't know how you pronounce it.
He struggles a ton in his relationship with her, almost to the point where they can't stay together.
Yeah.
Because
He's never
has
had a
no
picture.
idea how to handle conflict. And the reason he doesn't know how to handle conflict is because nobody in his family has ever shown him how to healthily handle conflict.
Well, I think too, it brings me to something I jotted down about Mama describing loyalty, and something I didn't think I realized, but I knew subconsciously. A lot of people that value loyalty, which is a big part of hillbilly culture, like he's always talking about, like, you can do anything, but if you talk about my mom, that's the only time he got in a fight, whatever. He says, big on loyalty. I feel like people that are really, really big on loyalty within that family dynamic use loyalty as a license to treat everybody around them like crap.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
Totally.
if I'm loyal to you, I get to treat you however I want to.
Because I got your back.
Yeah, because I got your, like, it's like the way is like he asks his grandma, what's it feel like to get hit in the head, and she just whacks him in the jaw
she
and
punches
knocks
him.
him out. Well, it didn't knock him out, yeah, but punches him and knocks him out. She's like, did that hurt very bad? No. Okay, well, that's how it feels. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I hate the loyalty card. I really always have, and that really made me realize how much I didn't like it. And then to your point, about not knowing how to handle conflict, all of this, it reminded me, he talks about answering questions about his family without lying, but also keeping it simple. Like when people would be like, so who's your dad? Who's this? Who's that? It reminded me, Rem and his dad are introducing someone to my uncle for the first time, I think. Do you remember this?
And you're trying to figure out how to describe the
Well,
relationship.
he's like, but my dad's there too, but I grew up with my aunt and uncle. So I think it's something along the lines of, well, yeah, so this is Bruce, Brett's dad. But
So what was tough about this moment is there was a period of time where Brett did call them his parents.
Right.
Because it was just
Correct, 'cause it's
easier.
easier.
It's just easier.
So I felt, so that's what JD's talking about. It's
Yeah.
easier, but then you get in this situation that you're about to describe. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So in that moment, yeah, it was extremely awkward. And you're also trying to pay attention to how someone else feels in the room.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, cool, this is Brett's parents, and that's his dad. But all right, so
Yeah.
are those ribs ready?
I'll tell you what, though. I'll tell you what. If it's an awkward thing, then what I've learned is it was awkward.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's going to be awkward for an intro because the life was awkward, and that's okay.
But I felt that so hard when he said it's just.
It was more so for you. It's more so we don't want Brett to feel awkward.
Correct. No, but it is easier to just in the moment, the years leading up to it, just calling somebody a certain title because it's easier to explain to somebody.
Yeah.
It's easy until it's not easy anymore, and then you're like, I didn't think about this scenario, so I can imagine like my situation is way different than JD. How many father figures? How many partners of his mother? We probably got to 7 or 8 that we.
She was married 5 times.
Yeah.
My favorite marriage.
Lived with many, many more.
Yeah.
My favorite marriage is she's dating a guy, and they're talking about getting engaged and getting married, and she breaks up with him, meets someone else new over the weekend, and skips the engagement and just gets married. Tells everybody.
That's a hidden gem. You're skipping ahead.
That's not a hidden gem.
That was one of my hidden gems.
Right.
I thought that was hilarious.
That was right in the middle of like.
He comes home and she's like, "I'm getting married," and he assumes
I thought you were
that he's
breaking
getting
up
married.
with.
Yeah.
Starts naming names. What are you talking about? You just broke up with that guy. No, I married someone else.
No, she was still living with the guy
Oh my
that
gosh.
he thought initially he's like, wow, I can't believe they're getting married because they've been fighting so much. And she's like, oh no, I'm marrying this other guy. And they moved in with him that weekend. Oh man.
That's painful.
Just
very painful.
Trauma.
Yeah, but I think that's a great, if you had to sum up JD's mom in one story, that's a pretty great story to choose. Like,
yeah, it encompaces the craziness
really
of
does.
the
What do you got,
brain.
Ren?
Well, what are we talking about?
Well, you looked like you had something.
Well, since we're all taking each other's hidden gems, I'm trying to prepare.
I just want to give. There's one more thing that I thought. There's a few things I wrote down, but one more thing that I thought was really interesting. The two things. Number one is a quick one. When he's it's cool because again, he's just a couple years older than us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at another millennial here, somebody who lived through a lot of the same stuff we did, a lot of the same time period. And he talks about the story in Iraq with the kids and how it helped him realize that even though he grew up in poverty, even though he grew up with such a crazy family situation, how lucky he was to grow up in America.
Free poverty.
And to be free.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, because the Iraq War was not popular then, it wasn't super popular. It's definitely not popular now, looking back on it. But I'll tell you what, at that same period of time, I had the opportunity to go to, it's called the Hobie World Leadership Congress in 2004, in between my sophomore and junior year in high school. And that was the very first year that they had representatives or delegates from Iraq. And we do a dance at the end of the week, and all of these high school girls were so excited to let these girls get dressed up and to have this dance and to do all these things. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't know if this war is right or wrong or what, but like, it's really cool that these girls have this opportunity now.
Where was the event?
It was in DC.
Wow, that's a cool opportunity.
It was an incredible opportunity, and I'm really, really blessed to be able to do that.
Now you did say Hobie World, so this wasn't a galactic achievement. This
Just
time.
world.
This world. What is that? Worldly? What would you call that? Or
Never underestimate
Earthly.
Marcus's
Earthly.
ability to outdo himself.
Oh my gosh.
So
I was being cool things.
I was being genuine when I said that was a cool opportunity.
it was a cool opportunity.
And then the college decisions and the financial aid. Like that, we can argue all we want about like college and different things, but one thing that's for sure is that he talked about how he was looking at this state school and they couldn't figure out what all the paperwork meant. They couldn't figure out what the loans were. He just knew that by the time he graduated, it was enough to put a down payment for a nice house in Middletown. Right? We had our babysitter. She was over at our house. She was getting ready to go play D3 soccer, right? So this is like the summertime. She's already signed everything up, basically. She's doing her financial aid package, and I'm asking her about these, like, oh, how much did you take out in loans? What are the interest rates? She has no idea. No clue.
Yeah.
Not a clue.
I'd say
to
that's
go play soccer
That's totally
at this
norm.
D3 at this D3 school. Right? She wants to be a nurse. She's already got certain certifications to be a nurse, by the way, and definitely does not need to go spend the money at this school to be a nurse. And I told her, I was like, okay, next time come bring your stuff. We'll just do the math. And we figured it out. And if she went for 4 years, she was almost certainly going to have somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 in debt.
Yeah.
Just to go play soccer at a D3 school.
Yep.
And
that's low. That's low compared to what I thought you were going to say.
Well, she had scholarships.
Yeah.
She was getting some other financial aid, those kinds of things. But it's
part of the machine, man. We talk about this all the time.
$60,000 to $80,000 range that she was going to be in debt when she left. And this was slapping her in the face. And she'd already made the decision to go. She's working out with the team over the summertime. And I was like, why don't you just go to the financial aid office and just say, how am I supposed to do this? Give me more money.
Do you think schools create sports programs like that to attract that kid?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Hey, we're not gonna make any. We're gonna lose.
Well, I mean, Title IX definitely
it forces you to have some.
But
just, I mean, hey, we're gonna lose X amount of dollars on the soccer program, but
we might as well
we're gonna
get
create
kids that can't afford it.
$80,000 times 12
of government
guaranteed money. So, is that part of the equation?
100% it is. And you and I both read The College
Charlie
Scam
Kirk,
and had various thoughts about it, and it was written from a very right-wing perspective. However, I'm actively looking for an alternative for the next 10 years to figure out how my girls are going to have an education that doesn't cost them $200,000 for a chance that they might not even use it.
Yeah. I think that in both of these scenarios that we read with Educated and with J.D. Vance, education was their way out. And frankly, I'd be lying if I didn't say I feel like I'm in a similar boat, right? I definitely think that my education, the network that I got, all of the different things, in a very similar way to J.D. Vance, very much helped me. It helped me see at a different level. It helped me understand different things. So I'm not gonna be willing to say something like college is a scam. But what I do think is that there's some predatory lending practices happening that need to be taken care of. I'm not saying that everybody's loans should be forgiven and things, but if you're gonna have a policy, take it out against the predatory lending that's happening at these colleges, because it's absurd.
That's the part of the scam. I mean, we're not gonna get into it. We don't have enough time for that.
That would be a fun book to do.
It would be very one-sided. We would have to get some people that don't believe in what the book has to say.
I haven't read it yet.
Marcus might be able to offer some
the other side
thought from the other side. Yeah, or if we just said, hey, Marcus is playing this role.
I definitely don't agree with everything he says.
Yeah, so.
I want to shift gears on school and go back to the parents.
Sorry, I just wanted to hit those things on what made you. No,
it was good. It was good. It made me think. Chapter 7, he vividly describes what it feels like to rely on a parent and not feel like you're imposing. That whole chapter was about basically saying the relationship Lindsay had with Papaw was one where she could basically take advantage of him, I think is the wording that he kept using. And he was basically saying, when you're the male figure in your life, sometimes you just show up and you're not cool. Like he described how his grandpa dressed, and he wore the same shirt every day, and he just wasn't cool. And so Lindsay, being a teenage girl, is not supposed to want Papaw to hang out with the kids. She's supposed to say thanks for paying for things and love him and kiss him, and that's the relationship. And he's basically talking about how most people who have parents in their lives have a relationship to which they don't have to feel like they have to earn their love and earn all these things. And their grandparents were the only people in their life where they didn't feel like they had to be overly thankful that they were even giving them food on the table. And that was a really sad chapter for me, that he had to describe that feeling of...
I think he goes even deeper too, of having to rely on somebody who is not your parent, because the only person whose job it is your parent. So he talks about how
he doesn't like debt. He doesn't like feeling indebted.
He talks about how it's hard, when you have to rely on somebody who it's not their in their nature to provide for you. That's not a guarantee. It's just, it creates this really horrible relationship at some point where when he dies, Lindsay just cries and is like, what'd she say? I took advantage of it. I took advantage of it, and it just ruins it, because that they're playing the role of mom and dad as Mama and Papa, and that's not who they are. So it makes them feel that way for sure. I thought on another parent topic, him hearing his biological dad's perspective on letting him be adopted was really it reminded me that there's always two sides to every story. And I've said this a lot, I really don't think I've taken the time to get to know someone and not ended up liking them for a season of life, or what,
taking the time.
Yeah, by taking the time, and by it really, I'm sure we all have relationships in our lives that we're I really should ask that person some questions. about that moment or that time, whatever the case may be. So hearing him talk about like that was like, oh, that's good. That's very self-aware. And I think ultimately, it just reminded me like, yeah, you especially in family, when it's a divided family, whenever there's divorce involved, so often, and I've even experienced this myself, like the side of the family you end up with most, you end up hearing those sides of those stories a lot. So be able to go back and like, it's like, dude, I kind of owe it to anyone that I haven't gotten their side of the story on. Like
sometimes it does the opposite effect though, where you hear it so much you get jaded and you feel like it's
smart.
It's not true.
One day you grow up and you end up not despising, but kind of looking down on that person of like, how dare you be so vividly throwing your own perspective at 13-year-old me or whatever the case may be. So yeah, and it's good. It's a good reminder of how not to talk about our elders in front of our kids a certain way too far one way or the other. Like they have to have their own relationships too. We do need to create boundaries. We need to protect them, but at the same time, like just reminder to be careful. Yeah.
Last thing I'll say, and then we'll get on to the next one. Chapter 6. So we talked about the difference between the book and the movie. The book goes into, in chapter 6, his dad's faith and JD's forming of his faith.
Yeah.
And the movie to me was so depressing because there's so much pain and turmoil throughout the entire thing. And then the turning point is him just getting smart and leaving. And there's no faith element at all. In the entire movie, I'm just thinking like, okay, like there needs to be more to this story. And also, here's an unpopular opinion. When he wrote this book, it was before he was a senator. It was before he had basically just gotten out of the Marine Corps and he was working a job getting into politics, I believe. Am I wrong?
I believe that he was like in investment banking.
Okay.
But he had worked when he was in law school. He had worked in D.C., done internships and stuff with the Senate.
Yeah.
He did public affairs work when he was in the Army. He worked with the Ohio senator.
I mean, he stumbled upon an amazing promotion for 6 months.
I guess here's where I'm jaded towards the whole school thing. There's this sense that it's an accomplishment in itself to graduate from an Ivy League school. And I just have news for you. While that is cool, if you do nothing with that, who cares?
Yeah.
It's like people who read books and get all this information and share it with nobody and do nothing about it. Like to me, like writing a book, now it is an interesting story, it's a fascinating story. To me, the most fascinating part is he becomes a senator, and that's what he does with it. But had he just gone to Yale, it would have been kind of an interesting story about how a hillbilly got out of the sticks.
Yeah.
But to me, the most important thing is like who he is now, what he came from that. And I just feel like, here's my unpopular opinion, like, so what you went to Yale? I don't care where if you look at all these people where they came from, like that's cool. Like, and I'll read your story but like, let's stop saying it's super cool to graduate from college because that's where the story begins, in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely needs, I think there's a lot of assumptions made. I'm sure there's people that watch the movie, they go, oh man, and they can start dreaming about what he did with his life. There are thousands of people per year that graduate from one of a number of amazing schools who are then working as a barista that summer or sitting at home at mom and dad's house still living there in their 30s. So yeah, it's a really important point, and it's a shift we need to make as a society because 30 years ago that wasn't the case.
Right.
30 years ago, you graduate from anywhere, let alone Yale, you do have a pretty bright future ahead of you probably.
I think there's probably a slight difference. Like he graduated undergrad from Ohio State. He then pursued Yale Law School. I think there's probably a slight difference here between the undergraduate degree that it seems like you're referencing and then the graduate degree that's significantly harder to attain and then you're seemingly going to use.
I still, if you do nothing with it, say so what?
Well, yeah.
I don't care that, like, is it impressive? Sure.
I think
is it cool that you do that?
He hits on this at the very beginning of the book and saying that like
Like, show
It's
me a life
weird.
where you
It's-
give back because you made money, supported your family, did something with it, and used your success to impact people for good. Like, that's where the story starts. Not you went to school and graduated.
So I thought that you were going to go in a different direction with this when you were talking about chapter 6.
yeah.
And I'm going to go there for a second because you were saying that it just seems like him getting into college is a big shift. But I do think that the faith element to this was a pretty big shift too. One of the things that he highlights in chapter 6 is he says, regular church attendees commit fewer crimes, they're in better health, live longer, make more money, drop out of school less frequently, and finish college more frequently than those who don't attend church at all. MIT economist Jonathan Gruber even found that the relationship was causal. It's not just that people who happen to live successful lives also go to church, it's that church seems to promote good habits. I was listening to a different podcast, and they were talking about this as well, because he goes on and explains that many of the people that he grew up with in this small town said, yeah, we're Christians, because the pressure was to be Christian, right? The pressure is that, well, you actually are going to be shamed if you're not going to a church at some level.
Right.
Right? So you've got, we'll just call them casual Christians.
Is this where he starts talking about California?
Well, yeah. Well, he says that nobody in California.
You're actually the opposite.
Nobody in California is scared to say that they don't go to church.
In fact,
whereas
in
Middletown, it's like, oh, yeah, I go to church. But my point here is that it's interesting because hillbilly culture, as he describes it, and I think I would say from lived experience is true, is that a lot of people would say, yeah, I'm a Christian, right? I go to this small town.
Christian
I
is
went to
culture.
school. I went to school, or I went to church with my parents growing up. Oh, I don't really go to church now, but I believe in God. What's fascinating is that when it comes to especially like men in marriages, and I'll have to look these statistics up. I apologize, but on this podcast I was listening to, it said men that are going to church regularly, just regularly attending church, have significantly lower rates of divorce. Right? So if you separate out people who say they're Christian with regular church attendees, and then people who are just kind of casual Christians, the ones that regularly attend, the divorce rate's not 50%.
Right.
It's significantly lower. Their spouses, their marriages are much better. Their spouses say that they're much more happy in those relationships. It's the highest levels of like happiness and children's success and all sorts of things. But what's interesting is that the people who are casually Christians or culturally Christians, it's worse than the norm.
Right, because you're living a lie almost.
Well, but I'm just saying it's actually worse than the norm.
Right.
And like in terms of like how many marriages or living in single family homes or single parent homes.
Well, Jesus addresses that quite plainly as a lukewarm Christian. Yeah,
it's just very interesting, and I think he hits on that head on in this. And
but it was interesting though, because then he didn't talk a lot about that in the following chapters. Like it seemed like a turning point, but that was early on in his childhood, and he doesn't talk a lot about his faith in his high school years where he's kind of rebelling and then
not a ton.
You know what I mean? So that was interesting.
But
to
I
me.
do think it was like formative in certain ways. That plus his grandma's kind of skewed faith.
Right.
He says he's Roman he's Roman Catholic now.
Right.
Which I think is something that.
What are we on right now? Are we on hidden gems or quotes?
I think we're getting ready to go into quotes.
Still working on getting to quotes.
Is it quotes and then gems?
Quotes and then gems. Yeah. So you talked about how he kind of talks about it and then doesn't bring it back up. Did you guys find, like, when you find out he's going to boot camp, did that kind of hit you out of nowhere?
Yeah.
I was literally like, wait a second.
Well, he made it sound like I'm. Everyone was talking me out of it, and they were right, so I'm not going to go. He set it up like he wasn't going to go.
I'm talking about like even the idea of going to boot camp.
Going to boot camp.
I just was like,
But did you know that was part of his story that he served?
Dude, I must have forgot all this movie.
So
I
if you would
did
have
know that was
if
part
you
of
would
the
have known
story.
that he
I didn't
served,
know.
it probably wouldn't have hit you out of nowhere.
So, dude, would
I
you-
think he made the assumption that you knew that about his.
His resume reads like a
JD,
politician.
You know what they
Right.
say about assuming. Yeah, I did think it was pretty cool the number of letters he got per day.
That
while he
was
was
neat.
there.
That was neat.
That was
He said
super
how much
cool,
his
like-
family loved him.
Like like no matter what, like regardless of how the upbringing was, like they really they loved him. That was pretty neat. But I also thought like that decision just felt like out of nowhere.
Well, it was because he felt like he didn't have an option. He didn't want to go work in the factory or whatever.
knew he was gonna owe
couldn't go to college.
minimal amount
Marcus,
of money.
I'll tell you where the. So I'm going to jump us into quotes because I've been
Go ahead.
dying to read this
Let's
quote.
do it.
I'll tell you where I think the true turning point was. In the book, at least, the way he describes it is when he finally decides I'm going to live with Mamaw. Okay,
Yeah.
and the mic
10th
drop,
grade, basically.
the mic drop at the end of chapter 9 reads like this. At the end of the 12th grade, I lived with Mamaw in her house with no one else. I could say that the peace of Mamaw's home gave me a safe space to do my homework. I could say that the absence of fighting, the instability, let me focus on school and my job. I could say that spending all the time in the same house with the same person made it easier for me to form lasting friendships and with people at school. I could say that having a job and learning a bit about the world helped clarify precisely what I wanted out of my own life. In hindsight, those explanations make sense, and I'm certain that a bit of the truth lies in each. I'm sure that a sociologist or a psychologist sitting in a room together could explain why I lost interest in drugs, why my grades improved, why I aced my SAT, and why I found a couple of teachers who inspired me to love learning. But what I remember most of all is that I was happy. I no longer feared the school bell at the end of the day. I knew where I'd be living the next month, and no one's romantic decisions affected my life. And out of that happiness came so many of the opportunities I've had for the past 12 years. The stability of knowing where you're going home to and who's going to be there.
Right. Safety. Home has to be about safety,
Mm-hmm.
specifically so that they can take risks everywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Safe place, tag base.
Yeah. 9 and 10. Chapters
Mamaw was totally the guide.
Totally.
For the entire book. And by the way, if you watch the movies, if you look at the characters they casted, it's unbelievable how well they did.
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh.
They've got side by side shots.
Oh yeah. At the end of the movie they show side by sides of the characters
Gotta
and
rewatch it.
it's spot on.
Side note, you reading that made me... I did want to mention this. J.D. Vance reading this book is super boring. So...
You think so?
Yeah, he's not much of an actor. He's just kind of
He just reads
reading
it. Yeah. Dude.
You read it with more emphasis
Gusto, yeah.
and different things than he does. So just warning for everybody out there, this one might be more of a read than a listen.
Or have Remington read it to you. Yeah, that's true. Well, what's funny is his voice sounds exactly like my franchise owner in West Virginia.
Nice.
Like every time I hear, like when I was listening to it, I was like, man,
I mean, that
that
makes
must be
sense.
what they sound like out there.
They? What do you mean by they?
Hill
Rem?
people. Hillbillies. Man.
All right, we're going to do some quotes,
Let's
some
dive
fun
into
ones.
quotes.
How about this one? How do we do this?
Or do you have to muff it out?
Yeah.
Well,
Blank zoning laws. They can kiss my... I thought that was so freaking funny.
That's a great quote there, Marcus.
Dude.
well,
Really-
I'm not gonna say the quote.
Ruby
but
red. She says ruby red butthole. Basically, it's so funny.
I'm not gonna read the quote, but the question Mamaw asked JD when he thinks he's gay.
Oh yeah.
Well, that whole scene is pretty funny. The way he describes that is really interesting because as a kid, he basically was taught that it's anyone who likes spending time with men more than women, and he's like, well, shoot, I don't like girls. I like my best friend
Yeah.
John over
And
here.
he's how old is he at this
He's
point?
11.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
like 11,
Yeah.
and he's trying to make sense of it all. That's pretty funny.
He's like, Grandma, I think I'm gay.
Yeah. You're not.
Oh boy, yeah, you can't say that one.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty good one though. I missed a word here, but I felt this one. It says, those of us lucky enough to live the American dream have the demons of the life left behind that continue to chase us. And that's so true that there are definitely, what do they call that, imposter syndrome? When you start, I think you definitely have moments where you've kind of come out of the gutter where you're like, you're still whatever you were in that previous life when something goes wrong, whatever the case would be. And that stuck with me for sure.
How about this? He's talking about Grandpa here, Papa. He taught me that lack of knowledge and lack of intelligence were not the same. The former could be remedied with a little patience and a lot of hard work. The latter, well, I guess you're up a creek without a paddle.
You know who else said that? You know who else said there's a difference between intelligence and ignorance?
Abraham Lincoln?
Alan Alda.
No, I'm just
That's
kidding.
in Alan Alda's book.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
He learned that. He learned that in acting, I think, from his dad. It's in that was a.
I wish more people knew Alan Alda because I loved that
book.
I love that episode. That was,
I
that
got
was
some
fun.
stats for you. You guys want to take? You guys want to take a pause for our stats?
Oh, we
Guess
have
what our
more
worst
stats.
performing episode is?
Alan Alda?
Alan Alda. Actually, no. This is top 10. So this isn't. We're in double digits
Alan
now.
dipped
so.
into the top 10. He's not number 11 on there.
That's true.
Yeah.
I honestly, part of that is because of my blunder of posting it on
Yeah,
the other day.
exactly.
You did destine him for
All
failure.
right, give me your top 3 books. Who's at the top 3? Just rapid fire. Who
Just
do you think
the
it is?
top three
top 3
books?
books. that we-
McConaughey,
Okay.
Grohl.
Okay.
Boys in the Boat.
Okay, that's the top 3. What's number 1?
Boys in the Boat.
That's right. Boys in the Boat, Green Lights, and Storyteller. Boys in the Boat is quickly becoming our most popular episode of all time. Only 4 listens behind Remember the Titans, which is our first one.
I've gotten some really good feedback on Educated, too. I'm wondering if that might gain a little momentum.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And my apologies to people who are listening to this where we clipped a lot and that we're figuring out the microphones. I blame Brett. No particular reason.
I would not know any feedback because me and my social media manager are off social media for this month.
Nice.
Really,
I guess we have to carry the torch, Mangus. Gotta post for the show. All right, top three movies, and then we'll go back to the show.
Gladiator.
Minus Remember Titans is at the top,
Okay.
so the top 3 underneath that.
So Gladiator, A Knight's Tale.
What do you got, Mangus?
When you want
I'm
more.
trying to remember all the movies.
Janae,
Yeah. Forrest Gump.
you're missing one.
Patriot?
Yep.
Oh,
Gladiator. It goes Gladiator, Forrest Gump, Patriot.
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Forrest Gump rose number 2.
Honestly, Gladiator is a super entertaining episode. We kind of are off the rails that entire show. I don't know why.
Forrest Gump is
was
number 2.
that one of the nights we filmed too?
Forrest Gump being number 2 tells me that people are definitely watching based on title.
100%.
Could be.
I just tonight sent this to somebody, sent our whole thing to somebody who's like, I'll listen to Forrest Gump. That's one of my favorites, which is fine. That's
Yeah,
great.
It's fine.
That's crazy.
And he texted me while we were here, and he said that we should do
Man, of
Big
all the
su-
Leo movies, you guys picked some
Office
stinkers.
Space. That's what
Not
he said.
stinkers,
He
but just
said
we
Office
missed some
Space.
really good opportunities above.
So what do you have against Shutter Island?
I
'Cause
don't have
haven't seen
anything
it.
against Shutter Island. I love Shutter Island. I just think that if we're trying to make this show popular,
Yeah, I
doing literally any other
I
Leo
thought Shutter
movie.
Island was
I
very
actually
popular.
think that,
is it-
No,
no.
I
compared
think
to
that
Inception,
movie-wise-
compared to Titanic, compared to
I would
any
not-
of the
I would
other
not
ones.
I think
enjoy doing
criti-
that.
Revenant, the only Oscar he's
I
won.
think critically acclaimed might be the way to go for the beginning of this. Like,
Maybe.
honestly.
Yeah.
I think it makes for more interesting conversation.
for sure.
Another
Parasite's pretty low compared to some of these other episodes. So
Well,
just
that's
so you know,
because
so.
I
It's
think
got to
that's
have
probably
a
the
good
least seen.
combo of audience and acclaim.
I
you
just
know.
loved watching it, wondering what you guys were thinking when you watched it. We need more movies like that,
I still think I'd last.
like Fight Club. We got to do Fight Club.
Oh,
Yeah.
Fight Club. He says that was the norm in hillbilly families. We didn't live a peaceful life in a small nuclear family.
Yeah.
We live the chaotic life in big groups of aunts, uncles, grandparents, and cousins. Also thought this was solid. The measure of a man is how he treats the women in his family. I think there's some serious consistency there with, I can think of many, many, many people in my life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love this where he's talking about his dad.
Yeah.
He's we fished at Dad's ponds, fed the horses, blah, 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 blah. He says, it was a boring evening, and that epitomized what attracted me to Dad's house.
Yep.
You know, our kids complain about being bored all the time, or at least mine do. And my answer is, well, I made you friends. Go have fun. But boring is fine. Boring is good. Boring is safe.
I don't have any quotes. I got 2 hidden gems.
One more quote.
You go and then I'll go.
These are he's talking about the teachers. This
Yep.
was a quote from the teachers.
Yep.
He said, they want us to be shepherds, but they're being raised by wolves. And I think that'd be pretty frustrating as a teacher.
To not have alignment with teacher and parent is a recipe for just nothing getting done, for sure. I think that's the biggest thing that I've realized since coming to a classical Christian school is that when there's complete alignment with those two groups, man, when you're rowing in the same direction at home and at school, it's an absolute game changer for everybody involved.
Totally.
Yeah. So my last quote, this is when he's talking about how he feels going back to, it's Middletown, right? Middletown. He says, what turned me into an alien was my optimism. I felt that, and it reminded me, this is almost 10 years ago. I was running in Elkhart. I had stayed at my parents' house because I had a staff in Detroit, so it was kind of midway or like 2 hours out. So that morning, I woke up early before I was going to drive to Detroit, and I ran, I don't know, probably 2 miles. And while I'm running along this busy road, I'm waving at everybody, and no one is waving back. No one, not one person. And then finally, I get to the last car. I'm like, this is the last car I'm going to see before I get back to their house. And I do this emphatic, like, completely unnecessary, energetic wave and smile, and she waves back. Yeah. And I post about it on Facebook, and I'm like, moral of the story, it's not them, it's you. You just got to show up different.
Yeah.
First comment, dude from Elkhart. No, people from Elkhart just suck.
Oh, jeez.
And he was dead serious.
Yeah.
He was dead serious. And it was like, yeah, like when you leave a situation like that and return, like, yeah, you will become an alien due to your optimism. You will feel,
man. So along those lines, like, just the way people attack life. So he's describing, like, I guess this kind of is under quotes, so I guess I kind of lied. He was talking about being asked what color wine, what kind of wine, what color, all these things.
Oh, this bothered me so much.
He goes, I thought she was screwing with me, but I used my powers of deduction to determine what the 2 separate kinds of white wine were. I had just dodged my first bullet. The night, however, was young. And so he's describing how uncomfortable he was not being in the fancy scene, not knowing what wine to use, not utensils to use. And I just thought to myself, there's 2 schools of people, and then in 80 to 90% of us try to act like we know what we're doing and are super nervous that we're going to be found out. And the 10% of us that just decide to say, embrace it and be yourself, win every time. And you make it fun. Like Alec Baldwin in the Friends series. Like Alec Baldwin has this cameo in Friends, and he's just over the top excited about everything. He walks in and he's like, that is the sweetest chair I've ever seen. I'm going to sit in it right now. And it's just way over the top and ridiculous. But you know what? I think about that in times when I'm trying to, like, you know, be cool and act like I know what I'm doing when I clearly don't.
Riley hates it when I go to somebody's house and I'm like, this is the sweetest island I've ever seen.
You know what? She hates it, but you know who loves it? The people who own the island. And I was actually thinking about you. I think you would do a great job of this. You can go to a scenario, and maybe you've had imposter syndrome before, Brett, and maybe you have been in scenarios, just like all of us, where you are trying to act so you're not caught or found out. But I think more often than not, you're just like, this is who I am, and I've never seen this movie, so you can make fun of me, but this movie's awesome, and I'm going to enjoy it for the first time in my 30s. Like, everything. Like, what if we just did that? Like, why do we care what people think? Like, and in this moment, I think there's a little element of, like, I might lose my Yale
in a job interview,
but whatever. Like, how refreshing would it be as someone hiring you be like, man, I am right for this because I'm smart enough and I'm going to do a great job, but I have no idea what this wine is.
At this point in his life, he has zero reason to believe that's how it's going to work.
Correct.
Out. Yeah.
Correct.
And this is what annoyed me so much about that moment was the pressure he felt on how to act in this intermediate interview. I I hated everything about it. It was like it was judging people based on everything that didn't matter.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, I'm like, I do the same thing. I do when I'm recruiting kids to sell. Like I do the exact. I'm making Snap. Like they know this, they don't know this. They went to this school, they didn't go to that school. Like what? I'm literally the thing that I hate. It's like, well, now I'm using the exact same type of thinking with like it's. I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
I would have been exactly like JD in this scenario.
Trying to act like you knew which wine to choose. And,
For sure.
Yeah.
I would have just said. Now I would have just said one. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought about.
Yeah,
it.
you would have been confident that you're just gonna pick away and say whatever.
I'm just gonna roll with whatever comes my way.
You will deal with
actively-
the consequences.
Yeah.
Whatever yeah.
I'm actively trying to be that guy that just enjoys something new. Like I want to be that person
Yeah.
where this
Yeah.
is new to me. Hey, tell me what's best. Like you've never had Baskin Robbins ice cream? No, man. This is my first time.
Dude.
Tell me what I should do. Like
Yeah.
why don't we do that?
Yeah.
I went to a Turkish restaurant today that this guy, he set the lunch. It was this Turkish restaurant downtown.
Yeah.
And I had no idea, like no clue what to order.
Yeah.
But he basically just ordered for the table because he goes there all the time, tells me it's the best food in Indy. And I'll tell you what, it was freaking delicious.
Really?
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, man.
What's
was
Turkish
it
food
good.
like? Is it heavy on
It's
like
Mediterranean.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
but
spicy
it was
meats and-
really good. It was called Bosphorus Cafe.
It's downtown?
Shout out to Bosphorus Cafe.
Do they
downtown.
want to sponsor this episode?
It was very good.
You know, kind of like my other podcast, we could just say they're a sponsor, and then free sponsorship.
No one's gonna know.
But it might completely raise up our street cred.
Yeah.
This
Sponsored by
segment
Nike
brought to you
and
by-
Adidas.
Is that illegal? Can
Have
we do
you
that?
ever
I think
seen-
we can do that.
Code.
I think if we say free
Code
sponsorship,
Code cover.
Free
Use
unofficial-
the code cover. You'll get 100% off.
free unofficial sponsorship.
Use the code cover to get an error message at checkout. Okay.
I got another hidden gem in chapter 5. He talks about TV accents. You guys remember that part?
Yes.
He's talking about the courthouse and how people are talking. Basically, he's just describing people in, educated people. He hadn't been around educated people with professional jobs,
Yeah.
and everyone in the courthouse was speaking very professionally. And he described that his only encounter of ever seeing that was TV, so he called it a TV accent.
That's awesome.
I thought that was pretty funny.
How about when he's talking about Mama. He says she's a violent non-drunk, and he says when Papa passed out on the couch, she'd cut his pants with scissors so that they burst at the seams the next time that he sat down. I thought that was really freaking funny.
So real. Just so completely real. So Lindsay, his sister, forges her mom's signature for some stuff at some point. I don't know if you guys ever did this. In 4th grade, I forged my mom's signature to go on a field trip. And my teacher gives it to her at parent-teacher conference, and they just laugh about it. Why was this ever a thing to just get a signature to prove something? Why?
What do you mean?
It's not. It proves nothing.
It proves nothing. I mean, the whole point of it is to say that she approves you going on the trip.
Right, but it doesn't prove that she actually signed anything. It doesn't. Any signature for anything, a credit card, anything, it's a joke. It's a big joke.
It's a joke. Okay, I see what you're saying.
I will say though that
It holds you accountable
There was
after the
one
fact.
point in time that I had my receptionist had figured out how to do my signature.
Yep.
And so she was signing checks.
Oh, yeah.
And the bank called me one time and was like, "Hey, I don't know if this is your signature."
I will say what's dumb is if some people, like some vendors, like if you don't have your credit card signed, will say it's not signed. I need to see your ID. It should be the opposite. If you have signed your credit card, I need to sign your ID so that the signature matches. the
Yeah,
ID.
like, oh,
Not being
you
signed,
studied
I could
everybody's
sign it
signature.
right now.
You know this is my
Yeah,
signature.
what is happening?
So weird.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so surprised Marcus didn't bring this up. The public figure JD admired most, Mitch Daniels.
Yeah, dude.
Did you get a little excited over there?
I mean,
At the-
I'm big.
You're a big Mitch
Daniels fan.
We all are.
We
big
could
Mitch
read
fans.
his
Yeah.
book. His book is good,
Yeah.
haven't read it in a long time.
The business school is being renamed Mitch Daniels.
and it should be.
Yeah, not Cranert anymore.
Yeah.
I don't even know who Cranert is.
Me neither.
That's why they're renaming it. They couldn't remember
Probably
either.
because he gave a lot of money and impacted the university.
Well,
and
yeah, I was gonna
state in
say,
a
poor
big way.
guy. We're trashing him, and he left
Sorry.
a great legacy.
How
Yeah.
about this one? How about this one, Rem? This had to have hit you as well, okay? Because we both grew up in the like purity culture, Christian dynamic that he talked about, where they were like burning CDs and things.
Oh yeah.
And he said, I heard people joke that if you played Led Zeppelin's "Stairway to Heaven's" backwards. You'd hear an evil incantation.
So, I've done that.
Is that not true?
People definitely said that.
Oh yeah, no, it is like
Not a joke.
You can't hear it, but it's like one of those things where you're like on the internet, you're like, hey, listen to it and read these words. You can make anything sound like what you made, and that's the way it was back in the 70s.
My mom and I were a part of remember CD clubs? Your family's CD clubs?
No.
I could pick out any CD I want every month, no questions asked. She never listened to anything. I had,
so then why do you only know rap songs?
Because it's all I picked.
Because that's all he picked.
Oh.
It's like the exact opposite.
It was like that or Alanis Morissette. Those are the two genres I stuck to.
That's pretty funny. My in-laws have season passes to Ruoff, and they're literally saying no to nothing. They're going to every concert. And they go, have you heard of Alanis Morissette? I was like, go to it. You're going to love it.
That's awesome. So what is that literally every concert?
Every concert.
Really?
Yeah, lawn passes. Great bang for your buck.
So what's the price on the season?
Couldn't tell you, but it's like way cheaper than just buying every.
Oh, dude, that's cool.
But it's like, you remember when we bought season tickets to the Indy 11 and then went to less games? You don't remember this?
I definitely went to.
When we bought season tickets, we went to less games than the season before when we just bought every game.
I still liked saying that we had season tickets. I also thought it was going to come with way more perks, so it's not. the case.
Okay, last hidden gem that I had, a big win for hazing, I thought, in this book. Big win, but they definitely, from a military perspective, they hazed these guys, right? They called them recruit, not Marine. They had to earn those things. They did the sleep. They did the calisthenics. They did all of these things to break you down. But I thought that what was really cool was that they also told the families, and you hit on this a little bit, that they were going to need letters and that they were going to need support during it. So while they're
discipleship walk-esque.
So like while they're being as mean as you can imagine, and basically telling these guys that they're worthless and breaking them down so that they can bring them back up as a unit in a specific image, as somebody that is going to be respectable, is going to listen, is going to be able to obey orders when they're supposed to, all those things. They also said, hey, they're going to need this support on the back end. And, I think that when it's done really, really well, hazing can be something that's actually really impactful in a positive way.
Yeah, I think it's not. This was brought up in Matthew McConaughey's book, Rite of Passage. I feel like there's a. I know it's different, but I feel like when there's some serious time up against it, it's like. I just said that because Rem pulled up a 10 and I lost my train of thought. When there's
Sorry, buddy.
I just feel like there's some rites of passage that matter and do make a difference.
Yep.
You guys ever think about how crazy it is that we have so many like groupings of rivalries, but then they have to set those aside for the bigger picture? So like if you're an IU Purdue fan, right? IU hates Purdue, but then you guys set that aside for the tourney, and then you set that aside for going to the NBA. Then you set that aside. Like if you think about war and people training, like there's rivalries between Navy and Army and all these different things, but they have to set that aside for the greater picture, which is Americans fighting the war. And that like just interesting dynamic, how like every different little subgroup of people really like hate each other, but they have to join forces together to fight the big fight. You know what I'm saying? Am I communicating that well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hate's a strong word.
I mean, that's what a rivalry is. You hate DePaul. Tell me you don't hate DePaul. He can't do it. He can't do it. He's speechless for the first time in podcast history. All right. I'm done. I've proved my point. Go on. Move on.
Love the person who went there, hate the school?
Sometimes.
So before we go into ratings, if you guys are ready to, I got this voicemail from our very good friend Drew from Cleveland, friend of the show, clearly. And he said, this is, I just got this a while back and then finally listened to it. Hey, man, it's Drew. Listen, obviously I love, you know how much I love you and respect you and the life that you and your wife are living and leading and how we've been grown as brothers all these last few years. I really do appreciate you. However, you giving Gladiator 7 is like one of the worst mistakes of your entire life. Those are one of the dumbest things you've ever said. It's top 5 movie. I told Marcus I'm a decimal guy. It's an 8.6. I mean, it's up there. It's right next to Good Will Hunting, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Sandlot. They're all kind of around there. Maybe it was late at night and you were watching on your phone. So let's call this one just a mistake. You messed up.
You've done messed up, AA Ron. That is.
By the way, you
sure.
said you were going to look up and see if there's any truth to Commodus being the father of Lucius. Have you dispelled that myth yet, or did you look that up?
Here's what you need to know. They are making a new Gladiator, and the original cast is involved, and you'll find out.
What do you mean? I'll find out.
You'll find out.
I know.
If they don't bring it up, then I was wrong. If it gets brought up, well, it's like an arrow to your heart.
I don't think there was much that you were right about on that episode.
No, that's why it was such an entertaining episode. We should have one person just saying insane stuff every episode, and then it will go viral.
Yeah, well,
I think we need another member of.
I just described.
I think we need
Trump's
another
candidacy.
member of the league if we're going to do that.
Rating time. Marcus is a decimal guy. I'm giving this one an 8 out of 9.
Wow, good for you. 7.
7.8.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was good.
It was great.
I thought it was
he
good.
wrote it well.
I thought I enjoy the completely off the cuff, just completely honest quotes of his family and what it really. Yeah, I was entertained.
Totally.
I think
you could write a book that makes you look good, or you could write the truth. And like, if you're a politician, you probably don't want people knowing about a lot of that stuff. Like there's some things about your past that you just don't want people, or you can get out ahead of it and just tell everybody this is exactly who I am.
Yeah, I think it was helpful. The reason I wanted to read it is, you know, how often do we get the chance beforehand when
before
they're
electing someone
39
totally.
or something?
Think about this.
to get at least a
We
view
don't
into.
get this book if he writes it after, right?
Could totally. And,
Maybe, I don't know.
But like, what if? I mean, this dude is on the trajectory to be president. Like, he could either be VP and then something happened and becomes president, or he could get elected president. We're talking about like an in-depth look and watching him rise to that. That's just not typical. Like, you don't typically watch someone's journey. Like, you all of a sudden know somebody and you have to learn about it ahead. Like, we're learning about it ahead of time before he even gets in to office. That's wild.
Yeah, I thought that was
Sounds like an 8 to
reason
me.
to do this.
7. Only because like I save 8s for books I really enjoyed and I want to almost read again.
Yeah.
He was written well, but I'm good.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. What's next? We wanted to do something Leo, and we landed on Revenant. Revenant's coming up.
Won the Oscar.
We got Sam Walton, his autobiography coming up as well, which I've really enjoyed so far. It's a big one. It's a 10-hour listener.
We do have some more recommendations. We did get an email in to the Cover Pod.
The inbox has been flooded.
Oh,
we're looking for a chair still for me to sit in, and so if you've got a extra chair sitting in your garage or something, you wanna make sure you give that to us.
It was actually fitting that it was the Hillbilly Elegy episode because it was one of our loyal listeners from Crawfordsville, Indiana.
That's true.
Oh, nice.
Chair for Marcus would be nice.
Yeah,
that'd be nice. He deserves a chair. Actually, a chair and then a good sized ottoman so we can all have our feet up.
Oh, a nice big
but
ottoman.
Not sit next to each other. Yeah, big circle ottoman would be good.
Yeah.
I think that's.
I wonder
good.
if there's a furniture store that wants to just give it to us.
The Room place is going out of business. If anybody
Is
wants
it really?
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's
I think they're out because they just had 3
drop shipping's
auctions.
crushing everybody.
What
crushing
is?
everybody?
Drop shipping.
Oh, yeah.
Crushing everybody. As it should. Kind of.
Yeah. You have any tips for anybody looking to drop ship 1,000+ pound coffee tables or anything?
Are you talking about my little...
Yeah. And then it was like, we don't want it anymore. Well, it's too heavy, so just keep it.
Oh, dude. So you know what he's talking about?
Yeah.
So the chamchaw wood. So I have these chamchaw wood pieces, and this basically this table that's cut out of a single big massive tree in Thailand, and like pretty expensive, and it's a side table, and I ordered it, and 2 weeks passed, and I'm like, I really want it. So I call them and I go, okay, question for you, where is my table? And they go, here's the problem. The table you ordered is 6 feet tall and 750 pounds, and we can't find anyone to send that. I was like, it's 750 pounds? I was like, I didn't read that part. Do you have anything else that's normal size? So then they sent me a picture of one that ended up being 400 pounds, and that sucker, man.
Yeah.
We had 3 people bring it up the stairs. 2 of them threw their backs out. That was brutal. Anyway, always check how much weight something is before shipping it. Oh, you're talking about the other one.
Yeah, the other one. Where like you were like, we don't want it anymore.
Oh.
And they were like, we're not picking it up, so you can have it.
Yeah. So that was my coffee table upstairs. I remember. Yeah. So they shipped it, and it was so heavy. It was another 400 or 500 pounder, and they put the table part on my on my porch, and you couldn't get your fingers underneath it. You had to have like a tool. It was so heavy. And so it cost me nothing because I said, I don't want it anymore. They said, keep it. So it was free. It cost me $400 for movers to move it from my porch to the main room. Yeah. True story.
Nice.
All right. Well, what's next? You just heard about it. We'll see you next time. Leo, coming at you.
We're just going to end with my coffee table.
It's a cool coffee table.
I don't know what else to end with.
Wait, say the name of the wood again.
Chamchaw wood. Look it up.
Chamchaw.
Chamchaw.
Chamchaw.